In Unit 3's live session, it was very interactive, thought provoking, and self reflective. I agree with many of the perspectives provided on various key points covered in the session. A couple that stood out to me were the unconscious bias stereotype exercise. I enjoyed how we began to look at a series of images of people from various cultural backgrounds. We were offered to look at them, and then the instructor provided adjectives describing and phrases and words, and then we associated them in our minds, did a self-reflection to see where did those words or phrases go to when heard as we were looking at those images, and just a self-reflection looking at that was really interesting. Another thing that we covered in class, that I agree with and that was interesting to me was the general generational, diversity discussion on understand various generations in the workplace and ultimately developing ways to build on our differences and work together. So we kind of covered the four different generational generations. The what was it? The traditional, the baby boomers, the X generation, the millennials, and then the next gen generation. So we were just kind of looking at ways in which everyone is different. Everybody comes from a different set of circumstances. However, we all have to work together in the workplace and to avoid stereotyping based on what generation a person comes from, but then looking for those common grounds in which we all can build from, grow, and learn to work more collectively, collaboratively with. Another concept that stood out to me that I felt compelled to introduce to my workplace is the conversation about micro invalidations. I think micro invalidations are prevalent both cross culturally and interdepartmentally and should be integrated more in our DEI efforts to avoid this type of aggression from occurring in the workplace. On my job, I know there are so many people that make these generalized micro invalidation statements to describe a particular unit, to describe a particular department, such as payment staff versus child welfare staff versus licensing staff versus accounting staff. They make generalizations versus sorts of people, women, men, blacks, whites, you name it. There is a lot. I feel that there's a lot of micro invalidations that take place in my workplace. Because of this, I think this is something that I definitely will bring back to our DE&I committee at work, that we can begin to look at ways in which we can implement exercises and discussions that would help to bring awareness that micro invalidations are real and to discuss how we avoid them and ways to move forward, not to practice that type of behavior. Another thing that we discussed in class was diversity as it relates to the LGBTQ community. And this, although there were like no big surprises to me that came out, this one resonated with me the most in that I enjoyed the various comments surrounding concerns of the restroom and gender associations, workplace, including and discluding members of the LGBTQ community in their DEI efforts. I agree that the world is definitely changing and we must get to the place where we are prepared to confront, address, discuss the real social justice concerns surrounding the LGBTQ community and ultimately treat everyone with the utmost respect. This line of work that we're in, it is, it's conducive to our growth in becoming well-rounded, that we are able to be the leaders of social justice that we are intended to be. I think that these exercises, discussions, and reflections from Unit 3's live session really stimulated. It was very thought-provoking. Okay, what do I do with what I know? How do I move forward with the information that I have? How do I become the change agent? And I think in one of the comments that I made in class, I basically said, I believe that God wants us to go out into the workforce. I believe that He wants us to be bait and that He wants us to be fishers of men, and that we must continue to keep an open mind, open heart, be inclusive, be diverse, be equitable, so that we can gain, just potentially gain, that great fish that God really wants to catch for His harvest. So I really enjoyed live Unit 3 live session. Thank you for having me.